Okay, let's do this. We are looking at the power rankings in the National Football League following week number 4. Now, as these power ranking videos go along, the amount of views and all of that seem to be going down. So, the amount of time that I put into them will be proportionate to that. So, and even last week, I was like, I'm just going to cut it down, and then I didn't. Weird. Anyways, and by cutting it down, I don't mean just slapping them all on the board. I mean just cut the time down. Number 32. They've now allowed 163 points. They've scored 26. And as a bonus for Miami fans, you get a bye this week. You don't need to see them lose this week. The thing about this was it was 10-10 between them and the Chargers, and my eyes started twitching. And I was like, of course it is. And then the Chargers, despite themselves, won. Number 31. They've been outscored 115 to 74. They have yet to win a game. They were close this week, but collapsed. And now they're going to Cincinnati, so the odds of them getting a win goes up, and that's Arizona. So, yay, Arizona. Arizona, I think they'll probably pick up the win this coming week. I do. Number 30. These guys have been outscored 118 to 66. They're at home against the New England Patriots. So if you think the Patriots have had a soft schedule, they now get to play Washington. So that's 5 weeks. And New England will have yet to play anybody that was seen as a playoff team before the season started. Washington is their next opponent. Bring on the hate for the New England Patriots. They can go 5-0, and there will still be arguments that they haven't played anybody. Number 29, being outscored 110 to 57. And they're at home against Arizona this week. Can they go 0-5? I think the Bengals can. I say that as a Bengals fan. I think the bottom's the limit. I think they're looking at Miami and they're going, oh, we could do 0-16 too. We could do that. That's it was a stunning non-game between them and the Steelers this week. Told you. This is. Number 28, and they've lost by a total of 70 to 33. They're coming off the bye week. They're going to Philadelphia. So my guess is the team that wears green in their jerseys is going to win that one, and that's the Jets. The Jets, they actually lose ground with this bye week. Now I'm not tracking who's moved up and who's moved down. I moved a lot of teams around. There are a lot of teams that are 2-2 right now, so trying to figure out who the strongest of the 2-2 teams are. Yeah, that's where it gets tricky. But the Jets, still winless. They had their bye week. Now they're coming back and going to Philly. My guess is they probably lose that one too. Unless Philly finds a way to lose to a team they should beat, which is something Philly's done this year, which is why they're 2-2. Number 27, they've lost by a total of 93 to 70. They're at the LA Chargers this week. That's Denver. And you know what's funny? That actually makes me nervous as a Chargers fan, because the track record of the Chargers against the Denver Broncos, my memories of games between these teams has been, well, frustrating as a Chargers fan. And again, people always point out, wow, you cheer for the Chargers and the Bengals? Yeah, I know, isn't that sad? So I expect the Broncos to go in and probably score the upset. I knew Miami wouldn't. Deep down, I knew Miami wouldn't, as nervous as I was, but I think Denver, they're close, and they have to be kind of chomping at the bit after this week, which was another close one that they lost. Number 26. I know these guys moved up. They've been outscored 88-76. They're at home against Baltimore this week, and you know what? Maybe the Steelers aren't dead. Maybe Rudolph can be that quarterback that they need, and maybe they won't be as desperate to get Ben Roethlisberger back. After all, he had a good week. Again, you got to look at the opposition as well, right? But it's a start, and now they're at home against Baltimore. And I jinxed Baltimore by accident after week 2. I said, well, nobody's going to be catching Baltimore. These guys look, and then they've lost 2 in a row. So if the Steelers could pull off a win against Baltimore, both teams would be 2-3, and suddenly you're looking at a very mediocre division overall. And there's no way to argue around that. That is a very mediocre division. Number 25. These guys have dropped to 1-3. They've been outscored 99 to 70. They're going to Houston. So if the Atlanta Falcons are going to turn things around at all, it has to happen this week. If they lose against Houston, that's it. They're done. And I think that any team from Denver down, you can just start planning for next year. Pittsburgh and Atlanta have to win this week, or else they're in the same situation. And odds are, they probably don't. They're both 1-3 for a reason. It is interesting though, because at this point, then you get into teams that are 500 and teams that are competitive and teams that are close. Number 24, they've been outscored 97-87 overall. They move out of the bottom row. They're at home against Minnesota. And you know what? I'm being cautious with the New York Giants. Because I'm not sure how much I believe that they're going to be able to really make a push for the playoffs. But being at home against Minnesota with that passing that Minnesota hasn't been able to do, and just in general, the Giants definitely make it look like they could do it. Because, again, the Vikings, when your own coach is calling out your quarterback, that's not great. So they have that going for them right now. All right, so moving along to number 23. They've been outscored 102-79. And again, with the 2-2 teams, there's a lot of them. So it's who do I really buy is going to make that move up. These guys are at home against Chicago this week. If the Raiders are going to be, in my eyes, a team that's going to push for a playoff spot, this is the week to do it. Big game at home against Chicago. And if they can put some points on the board, who knows? The Raiders have been very up and down this year. And we'll see whether or not they can break through and get to 3-2 this year. 91-62 is the score for the team that's at 22. They're at home against Buffalo. That's going to be very, very telling. And that's Tennessee. The Titans, much the same story of very, and that's where this gets really tricky, is all of these teams that are at 2-2, where none of them seem like they're quite in sync for the most part, and you're just trying to grade, well, who's at what spot, and it gets very, very tricky. Tennessee stays right about the same as where they were last week. Number 21, with a score of 84 points for and 84 points against, is Jacksonville, and they're going to Carolina. And what's interesting is Carolina's scored 95 and allowed 80, and they're at 20. These teams against each other, Jacksonville should be 3-1. They're not. The Carolina Panthers. For some reason, I want to say Charlotte Panthers. I'm like, nah, it's not Charlotte. The Carolina Panthers. I've always been a Panthers fan, sort of on the side, sort of like casual. And I have to say that with Cam Newton out, it hasn't been as big a deal as you would think it would be. So we'll see in a battle between these teams which cat team ends up coming out ahead. I do like Jacksonville in the matchup, and it would be interesting to see the Jaguars actually, get back into relevance and back into a playoff spot. And it's interesting because we were leaving them for dead after week 2? We were leaving them for dead. That shows why. NFL football is the greatest parody that there is because of the 16 game season. Although there are some really bad ones and there are some really good ones. So there seems to be a lot more of that mushy middle. Number 19, they've been outscored 102-94. They're going to Kansas City. And Indianapolis, well, they're still in this. And again, trying to grade out where teams are when they're 2-2 gets kind of hazy. Number 18, outscoring their opposition 90-74, and they're going to be at home against Denver. I'm going to be completely honest. The Chargers, in beating Miami, I didn't really give them a bump up or down based on that, because they beat Miami, which we're arguing about whether or not they're the worst team in the history of football. And yet, you've got 0-3-1 here, 0-4, 0-4, 0-3, 0-4. So there's some competition for who might be the worst team in football. Nobody's ready to give that mantle to the Miami Dolphins just yet, although I could probably glue this one on here and be done with that for the year. Number 17, outscoring their opposition 123-117. And they're at home against New Orleans. And I have to say, you can look at the Tampa Bay win over the Rams this week, and you can look at it and say, that's a Rams meltdown. Or you can look at it and say, Tampa Bay played a great road game. Either way, there was about 100 points in it, and that was one of the most exciting football games I've seen. And there was a lot of moments, at least especially in the fourth quarter, where I was like, holy crap, is this really happening? Yeah, it was. Number 16, they've lost their game, or they've been outscored 91-89, and now they're going to San Francisco, and that's Cleveland. Cleveland is up into the top 2 rows. Cleveland, relevant, might be playing some important games here. And again, because of the fact Baltimore's fallen to the pack, Cleveland is right now mathematically the leader in the division, according to all the stats. All the boards I've looked at has Cleveland in first. So we'll see what happens. Does Cleveland actually emerge as a first place team coming out of this weekend, or is this just, it's one of those weird things where they got to win, and are they actually going to be the best team in the division after that week 1 where everybody was just panicking? They've won 2 of their last 3, and who knows? They will get a chance to prove themselves against the San Francisco 49ers. If they can go in and beat San Francisco, that'll be interesting. Number 15, and they've tied 78-78 in their games. They're at home against Atlanta, and that's the Houston Texans. Houston is really frustrating in that they're not. Again, they're right around that middle. We'll see where they're at next week. This week is tough. Like I said, so many teams that are 2-2. Number 14, they've outscored their opposition 97-95. They're actually 2-1-1, and they have a bye this week. The Lions didn't win this week, and I got to admit, I really, really wanted them to. To me, it was kind of heartbreaking when they didn't win that game. It was so close. And so, I'm kind of buying into whatever the Detroit Lions are selling right now. Even though they're 2-1-1 and them making the playoffs is still going to be a challenge, this is a fun team to watch. And so I'm not writing them off just yet. Number 13, they've outscored their opposition 135-100, and now they're going to Pittsburgh, and that's Baltimore. Baltimore's not going to be happy about the last couple of weeks, and so I expect to see a much more angry Baltimore in against the Pittsburgh Steelers. That could be a very hotly contested game. If you want to look for a game where we might see a dirty hit, and we saw a bunch of them this past weekend, some real ugliness in the NFL right now. This one to me might be the one. And I have to say, I do not envy the NFL's job, because you've got to make sure that you're laying down the law when it comes to some of these helmet on helmet hits. They're awful, and yet it's really hard when you're throwing a tackle not to lead with the helmet to some extent. And so some of these are just collisions. Some of them are clearly premeditated. Some of them are very violent, and yet the ones that are accidental collisions are just as likely to cause concussive injuries as the ones that aren't. So I do not anticipate an easy time for the NFL in trying to clean that up and trying to get that at least controlled a little bit. You can't get the violence out of football, but you can try to make sure that it's not of the predatory nature, but it's still always going to be there. Number 12, they've outscored their opposition 84-63, and they're going to the New York Giants. Get a pass game, Miami or Minnesota, or you're in trouble. And it's funny because Kirk Cousins not that long ago was considered to be a pretty darn good quarterback, and now here we are, week 4, and there's complaining about Kirk Cousins. So we'll see how this turns out. But yeah, the New York Giants are going to be a really nice test. And if the New York Giants, let's say the New York Giants come out and they destroy Minnesota this week. Everybody destroys Miami. So when I say destroy, Miami comes to mind. But let's say they take down the Vikings this week. That could throw the whole board into complete and total chaos. I might just take 8 or 9 logos and just put them all in the same spot on the board and just go, and there's these, and then move on to somebody else. Number 11. I didn't mean to drop that one. Number 11. Coming out of a bye week, they've outscored their opposition 96-54 overall, and they're at home against Cleveland. If San Francisco is going to show to me that this is for real, they are a darn good team and they're capable, this is a good week to do it. So they're coming out of the bye week. They've got Cleveland. Cleveland's in the top 2 rows now. San Francisco's an excellent test for them. And for San Francisco, if they can win this, they go to 4-0. Notice, San Francisco on a bye week still moved up in my power rankings. They were 14, I believe 14 last week. They move up here this week based on what other teams did. And this is what I've been saying, that I do these power rankings, and it's the same as in hockey, where sometimes a team will move up when they haven't played or move down when they haven't played, because just based on the fact they haven't played, I can't just slap them into one spot and leave them there. So yeah, San Francisco is 11th on here. All right, I picked up 10th. Yeah, no worries. It's 10th. I didn't drop one of the other ones and then make a huge mess that I won't know where everybody goes, because I didn't write it down this week. Number 10, 76-63 is how much they've outscored opposition by. They're at Tennessee this week, and that's the Bills. I was pulling for the Bills too, but New England gives you nothing. We talk a lot about Brady, but this year for New England, it's about the defense. And people will point out, well, they haven't really played anybody yet, and that's fine. But every week, it's going to be more and more confidence. Every week means you're pretty sure you can beat the world. And so the more weeks that we see New England not allowing points, the more difficult it's going to get down the road for teams to get them. But for Buffalo, it was a good, plucky effort. Yeah, they lose their quarterback, but I'm not going to drop them down because of that. And that was one of those hits this week, right? Number 9, they've outscored their opposition 66-45. They're going to be at Oakland. They're 3-1, much like Buffalo. Buffalo's 3-1. Chicago's 3-1. The Niners are 3-0. I have to say, Chicago, excellent defense. Just like I said, Chicago has excellent defense. That's just the way this works. Now that I'm paying attention to football again, they go, all right. Shannon doesn't think we can score, and our defense is excellent. So let's just try that. A big win for them this week, and I think they can go to 4-1. As I said, they're at Oakland this coming week. So it's a nice test. It's a test for them and for Oakland. And again, much like if the Giants beat the Vikings, if the Raiders beat the Bears, it's going to put my ratings into a bit of a blender. But that's kind of how power rankings work when you're dealing with so few games that have been played. Number 8, they've outscored the opposition 110-105. They're at home against the Jets this week. So for the Eagles, who things look pretty precarious for after week 3, week 4 has saved them, and now they're playing against the Jets this coming week. So they should go to 3-2. And that should definitely help them out. They are 2-2. Their record is worse than teams that are below them. But again, I thought the Eagles had a really solid week, and yeah, so I put them back in the top row. We'll see whether or not they stay in that top row next week. But really good week for them this week. Number 7, they've outscored the opposition 117-104, and they're going to be at Seattle this week. Yeah, the Rams took a drop. So they took their first loss of the season, and it was ugly. Okay, this was just, the turnovers were ugly. Everything about this game was bad, and then every turnover seemed to end up in their end zone. At the very least, points on the board, right? They have to watch how they play. They go into Seattle and they do that, they're in trouble. The Rams should be very interesting from them from here on out. Number 6, they've outscored the opposition 85-69. They're going to be at Dallas this week. And I got to say, Green Bay at Dallas is going to be the game of the week. I believe that. Although Tampa Bay has a big meeting with the New Orleans Saints that none of us thought was going to be massive when this season started. But Green Bay and Dallas, they have a bit of a history. These teams may not like each other when they meet up, and I would expect some of that this week. So Green Bay coming off of a loss. We'll see how desperate they are for that win this week. Number 5, they've outscored the opposition 103-89. And I have to say, the Seahawks, who are at home against the Rams this week, they haven't been dominant, but they're 3-1. And they've been good. They've been good when they have to be. And that's really what it's all about. And I can totally see them beating the Rams. I can see them beating the Rams and going to 4-1 this week. That's going to be a very interesting matchup. There's a bunch of very interesting games this week. Because, again, from here up on the board, everybody's 500 or better. So it's been a weird start to the season where 24 out of 32 teams are still 500 or better. So that's 24 fan bases who feel that they still have a chance at the playoffs. And a couple down here, as I said, that might be like, we're not completely out of it yet. Number 4, they've outscored their opposition 107-56. They're at home against Green Bay, and that's Dallas. I could not keep Dallas in the top 3. I couldn't do it. At number 3, outscored 92-84. They've actually been outscored in their games this season. They're at home against Tampa Bay this week, and that's New Orleans. New Orleans beating Dallas is huge. Keep in mind, this is without Drew Brees. This team is now 3-1. This is an impressive team, the New Orleans Saints, showing that, hey, our starting quarterback might be out, but we're all right. We can do this. So New Orleans, very, very impressive. And now Tampa Bay, that should be a fantastic game. Which means number 2 and number 1. Number 2, they've outscored the opposition 135-94. They're at home against the Indianapolis Colts. And I got to say, Kansas City, they've been lucky. They're 4-0. There's always a little bit of luck with 4-0. So at number 1, outscoring their opposition 122-27, going to Washington, is New England. New England is lucky that their schedule is soft for the first 5 weeks of the year. KC, they've been very good, and they've been kind of fortunate too. So yes, they're 4-0, but for me, I'm still okay with having New England ahead of them. I look at KC's games being really close, and so they're behind. They got to come from behind, and those are big wins. But New England, really, it's been pretty darned impressive. So we'll see this week whether or not things stay that way, or if I see a victory from Kansas City that's so strong, and a win for New England against Washington, or maybe a loss against Washington. Maybe Washington pulls off an upset. It's unlikely, but hey, things happen. Maybe we'll see something that makes me say, all right, I got to take New England out of first, but I haven't seen it yet. And I'm wearing a Hockey Guy t-shirt because that's my main channel, and I haven't worn this in a while, and I thought I might as well. So there you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I'll talk to you again soon.